Alien cavalry charged. Human cavalry rode creatures they domesticated that morning. The Vraxian War Council had seen many species fall before their legendary cavalry divisions. Their six-legged drakehounds had trampled civilizations across a dozen star systems. But they had never encountered humans. Eliana crouched behind the crystalline ridge, her tactical visor analyzing the alien formation below. 3,000 Vraxian cavalry, their drakehounds snorting plasma-heated breath into the thin atmosphere of Colony World Epsilon 7. The settlement behind her held 50,000 civilians, farmers, miners, families who'd come here for a new start. Captain Reyes, they're moving into attack formation. Santiago's voice crackled through her comm. Her second-in-command was positioned on the opposite ridge with half their force. 200 Marines against 3,000 alien cavalry. The math wasn't favorable. I see them, Lieutenant. Eliana studied the indigenous creatures grazing peacefully in the valley between the ridges. The settlers called them thornbacks. Massive six-legged herbivores with armored hides and impressive horns. She'd watched them yesterday, noting their calm disposition despite their fearsome appearance. How's Project Longshot coming? You're insane, Captain. Absolutely insane. But she could hear the grin in Santiago's voice. We've got saddles rigged on 17 of them. Dr. Chun says their neural structure is remarkably receptive to psionic suggestion. Apparently, they're the golden retrievers of megafauna. Eliana had discovered that particular fact at 0600 hours when she'd approached a thornback with nothing but an apple equivalent from the colony's greenhouse and a desperate idea. The creature had nuzzled her hand, its massive eyes curious rather than aggressive. Within an hour, she'd been sitting on its back. Within 3, her Marines were doing the same. Humans had been domesticating animals for 12,000 years. It was in their blood. The Vraxian commander, a towering figure in ceremonial armor, raised his plasma lance. His drakehounds pawed the ground, eager for the charge that had broken 100 defensive lines. All units. Eliana spoke calmly into the comm, mount up. She slid down the ridge to where her thornback waited. She'd named him Thunder, though he seemed more interested in the flowering plants than warfare. She pulled herself onto the improvised saddle, feeling the creature's warmth through her armor. Around her, Marines were doing the same, looking simultaneously terrified and determined. They've been riding those things for generations, one of her corporals muttered. We've been riding things since before we invented the wheel, Eliana replied. We rode horses into machine gun fire on Earth. We rode motorcycles into plasma storms on Kepler 442b. We'll ride these beautiful bastards into whatever hell that alien commander thinks he's bringing. Santiago's voice came through, steady and clear. East Ridge mounted and ready, Captain. Let's show them why humans conquered a death world. The Vraxian cavalry charged point. 3,000 drakehounds thundered across the valley floor, their riders screaming war cries in a language that predated human spaceflight. The ground shook, the air filled with the sound of alien fury. Eliana leaned forward, whispering to Thunder. I know we just met, big guy, but I need you to run. Can you do that for me? The thornback's ears, large and surprisingly expressive, swiveled back toward her. Then forward again, toward the charging enemy. And Thunder, R.A.N.S.O. did the other 16 thornbacks carrying her Marines. And behind them, drawn by herd instinct and the psionic suggestions Dr. Chun had been broadcasting, came 40 more wild thornbacks. 57 massive creatures accelerating to a speed that made drakehounds look sluggish. The Vraxians had been riding their mounts for generations, yes. But those mounts had been selectively bred for warfare over centuries. They were aggressive, but relatively small. Fast, but limited by biology. Thornbacks were plains herbivores from a high-gravity world. They were built to outrun apex predators that made Earth's dinosaurs look tame. And they were big, twice the mass of a drakehound, with 4 times the momentum. Eliana had done the math. The 2 cavalry forces met in a crash that echoed across the valley. Vraxian plasma lances found armor but couldn't pierce thornback hide evolved to resist diamond-hard predator teeth. Drakehounds snapped and clawed but found themselves bowled over by creatures that barely noticed the impacts. Santiago's thornback, a massive specimen he'd named Valkyrie, charged straight through the Vraxian center line, scattering riders like bowling pins. He fired his rifle one-handed, taking down dismounted Vraxians while his mount simply ran them over. Eliana found herself face-to-face with the Vraxian commander. His Drakehound was trained, disciplined, deadly. Thunder was a herbivore who'd met his first human 8 hours ago. The commander raised his plasma lance. Eliana raised her rifle. Thunder head-butted the Drakehound so hard it flew 15 feet. "Good boy." Eliana laughed. The sound slightly unhinged even to her own ears. She put 3 rounds center mass on the commander as he struggled to rise. The Vraxian cavalry broke that it wasn't a retreat, it was a rout. Riders fled on foot, their Drakehounds scattered or injured. The legendary cavalry division that had never known defeat streamed away from the valley, pursued by a mixed herd of thornbacks that seemed to think this was all a wonderful game at an hour later. Eliana sat on Thunder's back, watching the sunset paint the alien sky in shades of purple and gold. Santiago rode up on Valkyrie, his armor scorched but intact. The settlement's secure. The Vraxians are requesting terms. He paused. "Captain, in the history of warfare, has any military force ever domesticated their cavalry the same morning as the battle?" Eliana scratched Thunder behind his ear plates. The massive creature rumbled contentedly. "We're humans, Santiago. We looked at wolves and said cute puppies. We looked at wild horses and said transportation. We looked at cattle and said hamburgers." She gestured at the thornbacks grazing peacefully around them, most still carrying bemused marines. "We've been making friends with animals since the Stone Age. The Vraxians spent centuries breeding war mounts. And we spent millennia learning that any animal is a potential friend," Santiago finished. He grinned. "Humanity, fuck yeah. Humanity, fuck yeah," Eliana echoed. Below them, the colony lights began to glow in the gathering dark. Safe. Protected by a cavalry force that had been wild animals that morning, ridden by a species that had never met a creature they couldn't befriend. Thunder nudged her gently, reminding her he'd like some more of those apple things. Eliana fed him from her pack, smiling. 12,000 years of domestication instinct, and it still worked on alien worlds. The Vraxians had their legendary cavalry. Humans had something better, an evolutionary talent for making allies out of anything with 4 legs or more. And that, ultimately, made all the difference. Yendi.